May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Ruth asked me yesterday while we were out, how's the sermon going? I gave my usual answer. I'll tell you at 12:30 tomorrow. But I did say, I can't find anything to start with. And then again today, as it has done over the past couple of weeks, a sonnet of William Shakespeare just popped up. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, haply I think on thee. And then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sun and earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate, for thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings. And then I scorn to change my state with kings. Shakespeare's writing about someone he obviously loves dearly. But it's a thought, and it's a way of thinking that the man in the story could have used. He'd have been better off. But we start with this man who comes to Jesus, saying basically, I'm sure something you've never thought and never said. Just tell him. Tell him. Tell him. He comes and he says, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Now, what does he mean? What's he talking about? Well, in those days, it was normal for the older son to get 2/3 of the family's estate, and for a younger brother to get 1/3. I'm wondering which one of the two this is. He was a wealthy farmer and landowner. You don't quibble over an estate unless it's worth something. He wants this younger brother, he wants to obtain more wealth. He wants to have a more advanced status within his community. He wants the family inheritance to be changed and to be distributed differently. Basically, he's saying it's not fair. And I want you to tell him so. Because, well, he's obviously, I think it's fairly obvious, he's been telling his brother this before. Now he wants this great teacher to tell him because he might listen to him. The challenge that came to me was about prayer. How often I felt the challenge of how often are my prayers, and I suppose as well, how often are our prayers saying to God, tell him this, tell him that, make them do this, sort them out, whether it's world affairs or whether it's individuals that we're not getting on with as well as we could. And they're not doing what we want them to do. And Jesus has quite a strong reaction. I mean, he is the one who's going to judge all the earth. And yet he says to this man, friend, who made me a judge or umpire between you? He walks away from the responsibility. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He wants things to remain as they are, and he's not going to get involved in this family dispute. And perhaps we'll see why as we go on. But this man is not happy. It's not that he has nothing. It's that he doesn't have as much as his brother. Were you ever like that when you were growing up with brothers and sisters? Or were they were the ones who were like that with you, weren't they? It's not fair. He's got this. It's not fair. He's got that. Um, my children were growing up and becoming teenagers when mobile phones were still fairly new. I hadn't had one very long. And we made Emma wait till she was 14 before getting a mobile phone. Well, by the time Alexander was a little bit older, we wanted him to have one as well because he was going to high school. And he got one at 13. Well, you would have thought the world had ended because I didn't get one till I was 14. And he's getting one when he's 13. And I mean, truthfully, we had to say to her, yeah, but we'd like him to have a phone in case, something happens on his way home. He goes to a different school to you. He can't depend on you. She was okay for a while. Until Christopher, the youngest, we almost forced one upon him at 12. Because, if Alexander was going to be trouble, which he wasn't really, it never really has been, has he? No. Christopher, well, I could make you cringe by telling the things he got up to when he was a teenager, but I won't. Well, then, of course, World War III broke out because with Emma and with Alexander, because it's not fair. You ever feel like that? It's not fair, but not just because you're missing out on something, but because someone else has something, or someone else gets thanks for something, or someone else is recognized and we're not. That jealousy is a terrible thing. And that desire to be like others and to have all that others have leads Jesus to say to the people, to say to them, to all of them, not just this man, watch out, be on your guard against wanting to have more and more things. Life is not made up of how much a person has. But it was in that society very often taken to be the case. That you're better off if you have more, that if you're better off, if you've got more money, then God must be blessing you. God must be pleased with you. That's the way they thought. And though many don't believe in God, there's still that thought around today that, you're blessed the more you have, the better a person you must be. Maybe talk about people being lucky, but maybe talk in Christian circles about God's blessing and about God's approval. Jesus says, watch out. There are plenty of other places where he talks about wealth being something that can keep us from God, about wealth that can be something that can be a distraction. But more than that, it's about the love of wealth and the love of things and the desire to have them. What does that last line say in the poem? The last two lines, for thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. As Christians, is that the attitude we have to God? That actually it's knowing him that matters, that it's following him that matters? Or do we get sidetracked into wanting lots of things, wanting more things, not necessarily because we need them, but because others have them and it would be good to have them. And so easily we get tied up with these things. No amount of wealth can secure our lives with God. Jesus says, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, because our life doesn't consist in the abundance of possessions. I've met some very sad people who were quite well off. The sort of person that wouldn't spend a penny if they didn't have to, especially if it was on someone else, but keep it all to themselves. The emptiness that comes from trying to fill that empty gap within us with more and more stuff, more and more things. I told the folk at Desford last week, I felt a challenge when we'd been to Bonn because Simona, Daniel's girlfriend, lives very lightly. And I talked about when she was going to move out of her flat, about the things she would get rid of and not take with her. And I think it'll be with a rucksack on her back and a suitcase in her hand that she will move on. And so I've begun, the folk from Desert, I've begun to give away, or at least promise to give away, some of the things that I've got in the study, because it's full of stuff. You couldn't get in there to talk to me. You'd have to come into the lounge. It's full of stuff. And our lives can get full of stuff. And then we worry about the stuff that our lives are full of. He says, watch out for wanting more and more. Be careful, because we can all slip into it so easily. We can all slip into it so easily and tell God about what we need and how much more we need, and it's not fair so easily. But life isn't made up of what a person has. Now, let's remember, he's not talking to rich Westerners like us, okay? He's talking to people who live life day by day, who go out in the morning, not on the Sabbath, but who go out on the morning looking for work. And when they come home, having been paid, have enough money to buy food for another day. He says life doesn't come from what a person has. And then he tells a story. He tells a story of a man who's had great blessing. He's a farmer. And his land has produced an amazing crop. He didn't expect it. We can tell that he didn't expect it because he hasn't got the means with which to store it. It's produced so much. We don't know what the crops were, but there is so much. He doesn't know what to do with it. And he thinks for a moment, and he thinks, I'm going to tear down my barns. I'm going to get, well, he wasn't going to build them. It was the poor workers who would work for day labor for him who were going to do it, weren't they? But I'm going to tear down my barns and build bigger ones. I'll store all my grain and my other things in them, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things stored away for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and have a good time. You know, it starts well. As the land of a certain rich man produced a good crop. That starts well. And people would be wondering what Jesus is going to talk about, but they'd be thinking, this man has been blessed. This man has been blessed by God. And he had. It's a long time ago now, but I used to work on a farm in the summers. And the truth is, and I remember Teddy Burns, the farmer, saying to me, he said, he was a member of our church. He said, we put the seed in the ground, we put the animals out to the field to eat the grass. He said, but we don't make things grow. It's God. Whether the rains come or not, that's God. He said, we can do all that, we can work as hard as we like, but it's God. And this man had forgotten that. This man had forgotten that it was God who gave the increase. But more than that, he is living in a land where there are day laborers who work from day to day, from moment to moment. And he says, I will build bigger barns so that I can take it easy for years. There was nothing wrong with his present barns. They were enough to store the grain season to season, to have enough to sow the next time and to live his life and to pay his laborers and to sell his grain for people to have something to eat. But now he was going to take all that he'd been given and focus it on himself for years. The rich farmer is a fool, not because he's wealthy or because he saves for the future, but because he appears to live only for himself. And he believes that he can secure his life with his abundant possessions in his new, shiny, big barns that will store all his goods. But he's forgotten about God. And he's forgotten about the people around. God says, you foolish man. Now, foolish has a meaning in the Bible that we might not always get. And the Psalms talk about it. But the fool thinks in his heart, there is no God. A foolish person is someone who doesn't take God into account, who doesn't think about him and doesn't trust him. And that was this man's problem. And Jesus says, that is how it will be for anyone who stores things away for himself but is not rich in God's eyes. How's it going to be? He said, God said to him, you foolish man, this very night I will take your life away from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? It's interesting that Jesus is coming round to inheritance again. He's saying, you're going to be gone and others will get what you have prepared. Life is fleeting. The things that we have, we hold on to lightly. As Ecclesiastes tells us, we can't take anything with us. Who knows whether they will be wise or foolish, yet they will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. The man is talking and saying, who knows who's going to get all my stuff? Who knows if they're going to treat it right or not? But when I'm gone, it won't be mine. The rich man learns the hard way in the story. The rich man learns the hard way that what really matters in life isn't what we have and what we can hold on to and what we can store up and what we can keep for a rainy day. As God has been talking to me about all sorts of electronic stuff and even those cables that I assure Ruth will be useful one day. The fact that I've got 15 of some of them really, but is not rich towards God. The challenge comes to us, and it's a particular challenge for those of us who claim to follow Christ. The challenge comes to us not to be frivolous, not to be careless, not to be careless about the future, but when God blesses us, to think carefully about what we do with what God's blessed us. I'm glad I picked this months and months ago. As Nicola and Chris will know, because I sent it to them. Because the challenge comes to us now here. The challenge comes, we've got rid of the damp in the back, haven't we? With God's blessing. And then we discover damp here as well. And the truth is, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm not worried about the money. I'm not worried about the money because I believe God will give us the money to sort it out. In fact, in some ways, I actually believe God's already given us the money because some of it, well, not quite literally, but some of it's in my pocket. These days, it's electronic, and my wife's got my phone, so that's a dangerous thing. But it's there. And the challenge comes to all of us, whether it's this or whether it's someone we pass in the street who's in obvious need, either of a sandwich or a little bit of cash, or something we hear about, whether it's the people of Gaza who need help, or a disaster that comes in another part of the world, or people like Baptist Missionary Society saying they could do with more money for God's work. Or as I heard of this week, a young man who was in a church in Gaza when the Israeli tanks rolled in and destroyed the church and injured him. And the help that the Bible Society are seeking to give to folk, particularly Christian Palestinians in Gaza with Bibles and other stuff. And yes, there are lots of challenges and we can't give to all of them, but I think sometimes I hold on to what I have too tightly. And rich towards God, oh yes, it involves a relationship with him. It involves following him. It involves doing what he wants us to do. It involves listening to him. But also it involves taking what he has given us and using some of that to bless others. So my challenge to all of us really is, it's time to take stock. And there comes a point when we have to have the choice of either building bigger barns or of giving away the stuff that we can't keep within the barns we have. And whether that's physical, we have a rule in our house: one book in, one book out. We don't keep to it very well. But what a blessing the people of God, we the people of God, could be in our community with what God has given us. Be rich towards God. We should be praying and giving thanks for what that person wrote. And the books keep disappearing, and we keep buying more, don't we? And they keep disappearing. But that's what it's about. Ours is not to ask why they keep disappearing. Are people using this as kindling? Yeah. Do they use them to sketch in or as notebooks? It matters not. And sometimes when we give, and we give to others, and we share with others, we don't see the results. But God does, and calls us to be generous anyway. So when you feel like saying, tell him, God, tell him, perhaps we ought to moderate our thoughts. We need to watch out that the things that we have don't take over our lives and cause us to walk away from God. And it's time to stop building bigger barns and giving away the surplus. And who knows what God will do. When we fix this damp, and we will, and it won't take very long. When we do, God wants us to continue to use this building as he does the one in Desford for his glory. Who knows what he wants to do? Are we willing to trust him enough? Are we willing to step out, as it were, into the ocean where we might fail, but God won't? Let's listen.